In this first video on competitive strategy, we're going to discuss the basics and foundations of competitive positioning that will allow us to discuss and focus on how firms develop a competitive position and how they maintain that position through competition over time. We start with what the goal of a competitive strategy is. It's achieving sustainable competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is defined as when two or more firms compete within the same market, one firm possesses a competitive advantage over its rivals when it earns or has the potential to earn a persistently higher rate of profit. We use the term potential there because sometimes the firm may intentionally give up profit to grab market share, such as what Amazon did in its early phases. Now, that competitive advantage can be based on two types of advantages, one of two types of advantages that a firm pursues. Either the firm pursues a cost advantage, which allows it to produce similar products or services at a lower cost, or the firm pursues a differentiation advantage where the firm is receiving a price premium for a unique product or service, where the customers are willing to pay more for that uniqueness. Before we dive into the competitive positioning and competitive strategies, it's worth spending a moment to discuss where these competitive positions are derived from. First, you can see there are tangible factors, things that we can see or touch. These can typically be traded and priced in the market. These are things like physical resources, such as plant and equipment, and maybe commodities, possibly financial resources as well. In addition, there are intangible factors which underlie a competitive positioning, and these are things such as capabilities, knowledge, worker skills, brand image, tacit resources that the firm possesses, which also can serve as the foundation for its position. Using these tangible and intangible factors, a firm will first seek to establish its strategic positioning relative to rivals in the market by maximizing the difference between value and cost, creating a value minus cost advantage. The greater that value minus cost advantage, the greater its competitive advantage. Once that position is established, the firm then has to sustain that superior position by holding on to its customers and preventing imitation of its product or services by its rivals. And that's that sustaining the advantage. And we will dive into each one of these in the next two videos. Before we go into more detail about competitive positioning and its defense, we want to first highlight key assumptions underlying competitive positioning. First, we assume that firms have different bundles of resources and capabilities. In other words, firms are different from each other and possess unique attributes that allow it to create different types of advantages. Second, we assume those resources are imperfectly mobile. In other words, they are sticky and difficult to transfer across firms. This is particularly true of intangibles. Thus, when we analyze the properties of resources and capabilities, it will allow us to determine which ones are more likely to sustain competitive advantage. However, before we analyze the firm's resources and capabilities, we also need to understand the firm's competitive environment. And this is where industry analysis and understanding rivals and their capabilities come into play, and then conducting an inventory of your own resources and capabilities. With those assumptions in mind, it's helpful to provide a few quick definitions. First, a resource is an asset that contributes to producing a firm's outputs. It's important to note that those resources are involved in the production process. They are not outputs of the production process. Thus, a firm's product is not a resource. A capability is a skill or activity that the firm uses to combine and deploy resources. There are two common classes of resources and capabilities. One are commodities, and these are standard resources and capabilities that can be traded in markets and prices can be set. Then there are more complex resources and capabilities which bring together or combine multiple resources and require investment to make them unique. This uniqueness or idiosyncrasy makes them difficult to price, but also make them provide a potential for advantage. We are now ready to begin thinking about the basics of strategic positioning, and we're going to use the value-cost framework, where there are two primary levers, value or cost, where firms will either focus on increasing value to customers or reducing their own cost structure. The value creation minus cost represents the value gap, and the greater the V minus C represents a greater competitive advantage. This V minus C, or value gap, is created through unique positioning or unique business strategy where a firm either performs similar activities differently than its rivals, or they perform different activities than its rivals in the production of goods and services. In the next two videos, we will delve deeper into how this competitive positioning is developed and then how it is protected and maintained.